upgrades really needed. I'm like an undefeated season when it's all completed. I'm like a bullseye, my confidence is full size. Put in the work, I'm like a scholarship, a full ride. I'm like the pride you feel, promoted black bill. I'm like a single malt scotch from the top shelf. Taking up the shake it, educated conversation. Hope you're taking notes, I'm like a Tony Robbins motivation speech. I'm saying bon appetit. I'm like a road trip, in and out burger when it's time to eat. I'm like an ace getting paired with the face card. 21 ahead of the pack, I'm like a pace car. Run the race Italian, I'm like a Lamborghini. Light up at the end of the tunnel, they try to come and see me. Better believe I got the skill I wouldn't dare waste. See me on the way to the top, I'm like a staircase. When it starts to get hot, I'm like a summer breeze. I'm like the feeling of relief, you found your car keys. Take a shot at making a name, I'm not going fast. Sit back, I'm relaxed, I'm like a tank top. Casual, less provoked, I'm like an animal. Radically, I'm studying, I'm like a paid sabbatical. I take it in like the knowledge I need to win. I'm like a vampire needing to feed again. Now that you know what I'm like, can you hear me now? That I picked up a mic, can you hear me now? That I'm up on the stage, can you hear me now? That I found my way, can you hear me now? Now that you know what I'm like, can you hear me now? That I picked up a mic, can you hear me now? That I'm up on the stage, can you hear me now? That I found my way, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? I'm like the villain in a movie that you don't cross. I'm like a video game, I'm like the final boss. I'm like the cover that's provided by the rooftops. I'm like the saints, I'm like the brothers from the boondocks. I'm like the vision of your crossing the finish line. I'm like a gold miner, yeah, I do it full time. I'm like an Autobahn, I'm like a Dawn. Do the math, I never run out of gas. I'm like a marathon, I'm like a mind game, y'all. I'm like the Hall of Fame. I'm like an earthquake, a fire, and a hurricane. I'm like the king of the class, I'm like Zach Morris. I'm like the special effects, I'm like Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'm like a yoga pose, a deep breath. I'm like an IQ test, I'm like a game of chess. I'm like the best vision, 2020 hindsight. I'm also like a second chance from a past life. Here we go again, go ahead and call a friend. I'm like a perfect score, Russian judge gave it 10. I'm like a trend that catches on, I'm like a bomb blast radius. I'm like a boom from the .com. Now that you know what I'm like,